It's RT International. Thanks for joining us. Medical charity Doctors Without Borders says 3 of its staff have been killed when a suspected US airstrike hit a clinic in the Afghan city of Kunduz. Let's get some more details on this now. We're joined live by Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, the Dean of the Jindal School of International Affairs. Great to see you today. Very worrying news coming here out of Afghanistan. If it was a NATO airstrike, how on earth was it hitting a hospital?
It shows poor planning, poor insight, poor intelligence. Obviously, it was not intentional, but the fact that it's happened, and it's the only running hospital in Kunduz at a time of critical emergency when the Taliban have run over it. And overall, I think it also reflects that the Americans are becoming clueless about what's happening on the ground in Afghanistan. General Campbell, who the Western media boasts is the de facto defense minister of Afghanistan, has come out in the past saying that there's no threat to urban centers and Kunduz is pretty secure and so on. Now we see the reality, it's been overtaken, and now that we are talking about a threat to the entire north and eastern provinces of Afghanistan, which is far away from the Taliban heartland. So it's a huge setback. The so-called counter-terrorism operations and the training and the support that the Americans have been giving to the Afghan military has been less than desirable. So the Afghan state, I'm not taking away the blame from them. They have bungled some on their own. But I think this reflects, this strike today, and is reflective, symptomatic of the overall failure of the U.S. mission there for the last 15 years.
Well, you raise a good point. That this hospital that's been struck by a bombing campaign in northeastern Afghanistan, as you mentioned, the only one of its type in the entire region, offering trauma help for people who have lost their limbs, for example, in IEDs and the ongoing war. Some might say that airstrikes like this, almost certainly accidental, would actually play into the hands of the Taliban.
Yes, the Taliban have been saying after occupying Kunduz that we are going to weed out all those who are collaborators of the infidels, by which they mean the Americans, and the puppet government, by which they mean the government in Kabul. But I think we must make a distinction between the two. The government in Kabul is a legitimate one, is an elected one, and it is the responsibility of the entire region to support it. But what the Americans are doing, unfortunately, is making it harder for the Afghan state to survive and to be stable. And this is where I think the role of the external actors in this war continues, even though the Americans have reduced their troop presence to only 10,000 or so. The fact is they're being highly ineffective. And the crisis in Kunduz is showing that, they have gone in with blinkers in 2001, and they've still not taken them off. They believe that they are saviors. They have this condescension towards the Afghans. They have been complaining about the Afghans, saying, they're abusing young boys and so on, which is true. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the Americans go in with a level of arrogance and with a holier than thou attitude, and it's not helping. And right now, it's clear that their notion of what is Afghanistan stability is completely warped, and it's based on bad logistics and poor planning.
Well, as you say, Dr. Chaulia, the US has whittled down the entire number of troops in Afghanistan now, approximately 10,000 or so left. They're supposed to leave by the end of 2016, but with the Taliban clearly making new gains in the north of the country, do you think the troops might have to stay a bit longer now?
Well, President Ghani has said that he would like them to be there for longer. And I think President Obama has also said that it is based on the situation on the ground. But now, in a way, they are being made to eat humble pie, because even with 10,000, they are not able to stop this. So how many more will they need to bring in to stem the rot? I think the real solution lies in building the capacity of the Afghan state, both in the civilian sector and the military sector. Unfortunately, the Americans who have been in charge of this capacity building for the last 14, 15 years have not delivered. So I think the onus should be on regional powers in the region, Iran, Afghanistan, India, China. All of us will need to pitch in and come up with an alternative template to stabilize Afghanistan, because the American one has not particularly helped. But nonetheless, we do need the Americans there, and that's what the Afghans are saying right now. So, but the point is, at the end of this year, the Taliban will be sensing that they have a bigger chance because Obama is in a withdrawal mode. So all of this, if you add up, it's a fiasco, and it's not looking pretty at all.
Now, what about Afghanistan's own armed forces, Dr. Chaulia? As you know, for the past 14 years, they've been receiving assistance from various parts of the global community, the fight against al-Qaeda and the Taliban. Are Afghanistan's forces not by this point properly able to deflect, deter and defeat the Taliban?
They do have elite special forces and commando units that are exceptionally good and are globally benchmarked in terms of their abilities to do operations. But I think the rank and file, as well as some of the senior military officials, have been shown to be corrupt or lacking in will and integrity. So it's so fascinating that in Kunduz and around that, people are saying that even non-Pashtuns who have traditionally been against Taliban have joined Taliban ranks out of frustration about the failure of the Afghan security forces. Some of the warlords trained by the Americans have been found to be exacting punishments on innocent people and therefore have alienated lots of tribes. All of these add up, and the Americans have had a policy of indirectly supporting warlords there as a kind of a counter to Taliban, but these warlords are no better, and therefore it has become such a big mess in terms of credibility and confidence of the public towards the state. We have to restore it, and the first step will be to actually reduce the American footprint there and to actually involve the regional players from around Afghanistan.
All right, Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, the Dean of the Jindal School of International Affairs. A great pleasure. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming on.